State of the Union. What is the point of an official rebuttal if it's not going to be something that directly contrasts what the president has just said?
I think to give the Democrats or whatever the opposition party is equal time to address the American people. Well, not equal time, but to give them some time to address the American people. Listen, these responses are typically terrible. The last one that was actually good was the one with Joni Ernst, who's a senator from Iowa. I thought she was great, so maybe we need to have the women doing it.
Remember Marco Rubio's?
In terms of grading these response speeches, I actually think she did quite well. I disagree with a number of things she said in terms of politics. It was interesting to me, though, as you said, that she didn't address much of what the president said. What she focused on was telling her life story and telling what she wanted to accomplish. So for me, that speech was purely setting up whatever she's going to run for the next office.
And clearly,
that was for herself. That wasn't for the
clearly,
Democrats at large.
The Democrat Party feels that she has a big future nationally within the party, and that's why she was positioned as such. But I think she's smart enough, she's adept enough, she's a good enough politician and speaker that she really could have tackled a few, even some of the early issues that the president talked about that Democrats took issue with.
Well, how do you talk about racism and not address the
governor of Virginia?
Governor North.
I mean, there's no credibility if you don't address that.
No, look, when it comes to the response, I agree. It's hard to do for anyone. But these are pre-written. These are basically like a marketing speech. That's what a response is. I'd rather go back and look at what the president has delivered in this speech. And with the exception of 1 or 2 points, I'm going to give this one a high rating because he laid out not only a plan, he tackled key issues, kitchen table issues for Americans, but he ended with a vision. And what have great presidents done? They have given a vision, they have projected what they would like to see Americans come together on, and choosing greatness was a great theme. It follows that vision. It follows that no matter where you are, mountain peaks, valleys, sea to sign and sea, that we're Americans. So he's calling for American unity because he knows factually that we're not going to get Democrat and Republican unity.
I want to read something because he talked about reigniting the American imagination, and this was a line from December 1st, 1862, as Abraham Lincoln was delivering his State of the Union speech. And he, the president, and we have that incredible moment between Herman and Joshua, that, and people on social media were talking about how they were sobbing during the speech. I don't think anyone thought they were going to have that reaction during this State of the Union address. But in contrasting that and talking about freedom, Abraham Lincoln wrote, "In giving freedom to the slave, we assure freedom to the free. Honorable alike in what we give and what we preserve, we shall nobly save or meanly lose the last best hope of earth." And
it carries forward. What is our Declaration of Independence? It's a cultural promise. It's our cultural DNA. Lincoln carried that out. And if you look at his speeches, carry that forward to what Trump did today. He carried that vision forward in the 21st century. He talked about a 21st century world. America needs to move forward. So these issues that are all on the table, of which we've all got many notes here, lead to a simple fact for many Americans. Do we believe we're going to do better? Reagan's question, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? Trump saying, looking forward, our best days are ahead of us. But also looking back to Joshua's point, and as someone who has spent years doing specials for the World War II Museum, traveling to Normandy, going to Iwo Jima, being with these veterans in close quarters, and having interviewed so many of them, literally hundreds of them, they have that affinity for each other, but they reflect America that people love and want to see again, really resurge on the world stage, and that was a great moment.
All right, so Tommy, let's go to you in Los Angeles. What stood out to you tonight? What did you like best?
What stood out is that she didn't watch the speech, or if she didn't watch the speech, she didn't care about what he said in the speech. I mean, she flat out said that Republican leadership is crushing the middle and working class. That is after President Trump laid out not feelings, but facts about wages rising, about low unemployment rates, about Americans coming off of food stamps. Did she even pay attention? Because to go out so unabashedly and say that the Republican leadership is crushing the middle class, I'm sorry, that that infuriated me. But what I noticed that Stacey Abrams did that all Democrats seem to do is they talk about feelings, they talk about their talking points, their general bullet points that they know is going to excite their base, climate change, gun control, but they don't ever talk about how they're going to get there. They don't lay out any plans, they don't lay out any strategy, any real agenda, because if they did, what they would have to tell the American people is, we want to raise your taxes, we want to strap you with more regulations, we want more illegal immigrants, and we want more voter fraud because we don't want to pass voter ID laws. If they were to actually lay out the way in which they're going to get to their talking points, it would be a turnoff to the American people. So instead, they just brush over the issues.
You're absolutely right. And when you hear Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez talking about the Green New Deal and Medicare for all, there's absolutely no, I mean, first of all, there's no way of implementing those programs. And no one from that camp, whether it's her or Kamala Harris or Bernie Sanders, wants to talk about specifics and how you pay for something like that, because that's a pretty critical element. But also, you know, what that leads to is what you were just talking about, and that is overtaxing the middle class, because you're not going to get the kind of revenue necessary in order to prop up those programs by raising corporate taxes or Elizabeth Warren's wealth tax.
Well, exactly, and that's what they don't want to talk about, because it sounds good to say we're just going to tax the billionaires. That's what sounds good to the American people, because the average low information voter says, oh yeah, you know, they have more money than me, so they don't need it. But what they don't realize is in actuality and in reality, people that have billions of dollars are not going to be taxed to death. They're going to take their money and they're going to leave the country, or they're going to put their money elsewhere. And then who is going to fund all these entitlement programs that the Democrats are so married to? Again, they love to throw out these fancy words and these fancy talking points that sound so good to average Americans with no real way to pay for them other than you have it, I don't, let's take it.
Yeah, and those are two vastly different things. And, you know, that level of zero-sum jealousy and, you know, practically speaking, how do you pay for things? Two different issues that, and they don't tackle either one very well. What did you like best? What was your favorite moment from the president's speech?
Well, favorite moment from the president's speech is just his unifying message and how he talked about how much he loves this country and what he's going to do to make sure that this country remains #1. And again, Stacey Abrams also talked about how much she loved this country, and I was actually inspired by that in the beginning. She was talking about the hard work of her family. I thought that was great. And then she started into the talking points that made no sense. Again, President Trump in his speech laid out plans. He laid out accomplishments, how we got there, what he wants to do in real terms. She did none of that. It was disappointing. It was sounds good, it was charismatic, but at the end of the day, it was nothing burger.
All right. I really liked the president talking about governing as one nation, because we know that there are two parties in power right now. We know that we're living under the tyranny of a two-party system, this duopoly. Everyone knows that. But what the president was saying is we have to live and govern as one nation, and rejecting the politics of revenge, embracing compromise and the common good. Let's see how that was received.
Millions of our fellow citizens are watching us now gathered in this great chamber, hoping that we will govern not as two parties, but as one nation. But we must reject the politics of revenge, resistance, and retribution, and embrace the boundless potential of cooperation, compromise, and the common good.
You should have seen AOC's face after that. She was like, oh, she was so disgusted by that. David, I will go to you to react to that and to give me your favorite moment from the speech.
Really, that's one of my favorites. Really, it's about American greatness. It's speech where he talked about it. If you go back to what President Reagan did when he spoke about that, if you talk about the things that have really brought Americans together, the president did something tonight, and he's done it to the Democrats over time. He reaches past, as a matter of fact, he reaches past some of the Republicans who are reticent to support him, and he reaches out to the American people. So it's not really just a favorite moment, but it's the theme of reaching past to the American people who saw a problem in Washington, elected the non-politician to go in there and frankly break things up and destroy what has been an embedded culture of the political class versus the people. that is one of Trump's greatest strengths. And albeit the bull in the china shop at times, when he doesn't, or I wish he wasn't as much, he has gone in there and disrupted this.
Yeah. What did you like, Morgan?
So something we haven't talked about yet that I thought was very powerful, and I thought the president could have even talked more about what his administration done, is Venezuela. And you and I talked about that a little bit earlier. He really, I mean, if you listen to what the president said about how we're standing for the interim president Guaido, and you see what socialism has done to wreck a prosperous country where people are starving in the streets, and then you can't stand against socialism in that speech is sort of, beyond me. This president has done, in his administration, his Treasury Secretary have done so much in the past 2 years, a coordinated campaign against this evil regime in Venezuela. And I thought that that was a very powerful moment. And so for Americans, especially young Americans who don't remember the Cold War and maybe do not understand why socialism is a bad thing, maybe they think it's sexy because they see AOC. Look at this Venezuela story, and the president and his team have hit a home run there.
Yeah, and socialism is inferior to capitalism, and that's the message, and that's what people in this country have to know, and it's what leaders have to be unashamed to say. It is okay to express your creativity through a new business and being an entrepreneur and enterprise, because that's what lifts people out of poverty. And when people are lifted out of poverty, they live. They don't succumb to diseases and live shorter lives because they don't have access to food, transportation, healthcare, the kind of things that come in a capitalist society.
Well, if you look at the effects of socialism around the world and you look at the effects of capitalism, what has lifted more people out of poverty as a system, as an economic system? It's why the Democrats and the left cannot make anything but the emotional argument to get people to, because if you start doing the economic argument, you see where this comes out. Now, is capitalism perfect? No, nothing ever will be. But capitalism has something that's important. Opportunity and individual goals can be met. You have a chance to rise above it. And opportunity is the real American dream.
Right.
We're not equal. We have different wants and needs.
Can I have one more favorite moment, too? Because I thought the president was very gracious whenever he recognized all of the women that were in Congress. Most of them were Democrats. We did have some Republicans like Marsha Blackburn elected to the Senate in Tennessee. But he took a moment to recognize all of the women that had been elected.
Yeah,
I thought that was very gracious.
First he talked about how this is the lowest unemployment rate for women and how there are more women in the workforce than ever, and they all stood up and cheered and high-fived, which was a wonderful, jubilant moment. And then it became very funny because he said, wait, you're going to want to keep standing.
You're gonna love this
and then he
next
talked
one.
about the historic number of women in Congress and also, extended the moment. I thought that was great, and I don't think Democrats expected that, and I'm glad fewer of them boycotted because that is something that is unique to this president and his ability. Silk, let me bring you in. Let's talk some more about what struck you about the president's speech.
Well, what struck me the most is when he said, not as two parties, but as one nation. Whenever I voted for Donald Trump, I didn't vote based on the party. I voted based on the person who can best do the job. And that's why I feel that what he's doing right now is the best job that he can do despite the stagnation of our country thanks to the Democrats. And then when I look at socialism, that's the Democrats' playbook. They want to keep you stuck in a rut looking really messed up because they know if they can keep you government dependent, then they can control you easily. And I'm not for that. I'm for capitalism. I'm for people paying their own way, making their own way. That's the best thing. And one more thing, Alice Johnson. I cried when she cried.
Amen.
And let me tell you something. This lady sent in for a pardon under Obama, and he denied her. But my President Donald J. Trump, the one that the left want to call a racist, is the one that allowed her pardon to go through, and she's out of jail free today. People need to understand what's going on and what's been going on. There's so many things that the Democrats could have gotten done. They could have gotten done, but it's not in their DNA to get it done. They want to see this country stagnated. That's why they're known as the resistors.
That's a really good point about Alice Johnson, because this story is not new. And when the president nominated Jeff Sessions and talked about law and order and some of the other issues, it didn't seem as though criminal justice reform would become a priority for this administration, like it has. And I'm actually very grateful for Kim Kardashian in bringing Alice Johnson to the president's attention, because it also allowed people to realize the plight of others who have been sentenced so unfairly in this country. And that's the kind of reform that we need. So people who have committed nonviolent crimes, who want to rehabilitate themselves, are not locked in cages for the rest of their lives.
Right. But remember, this is a Democrat. This was a Democrat law under Bill Clinton, the crime bill.
That's right. Absolutely right. Yep.
That's where this all came from. And so we had a black president that was supposed to be for black people, that didn't do absolutely nothing for the benefit of black people, especially when it came down to the very thing that ails black people, them being locked up in prison for a little bit of nothing for the rest of their lives. But I'm grateful for my president for looking past the stupidity of the Democrats and realizing we got to get here and get some work done. That's why we voted for a businessman, not a well-rehearsed politician.
And also a non-interventionist. And I thought one of his best lines of the night, great nations do not fight endless wars. What did you think of that, Morgan?
More important to me was what he signaled about a continued counterterrorism mission in Afghanistan. So to people like me, that signals his commitment, as he said, as it relates to Syria, as well to stay on top of the ISIS and the Al-Qaeda threat. In the negotiations with the Taliban, if we do get a negotiated peace with them, and President Ashraf Ghani, unfortunately, has not been a part of those negotiations thus far, ISIS and Al-Qaeda will not be a part of that negotiated agreement, clearly. So for me, I was very happy to see that he wants to keep a counterterrorism presence. And I think what I would have liked to hear a little bit more is the reason why we need to not have endless wars is because, as his national security strategy states, we have to shift to a focus of great power war. We have to focus on building ships again, on building weapons again, because our new threat, one that we're going to be facing for the next several decades, is the China and is the Russia threat. And so that was the only thing I thought he missed a little bit of an opportunity just to highlight. It's not just about endless wars. It's because he's transitioning the entire national security and defense apparatus to a brand new threat.
Well, it's also, and you talk about this, you were in the Navy, the shift to multi-platform ships, the expansion. When we went from a 600-ship Navy under Jim Webb.
That sounds really inexpensive.
But here's the importance of this. You have to have sea power. When the president outlined the Indo-Pacific region, and you look at what we have to do to protect commerce, to traverse those waters, to operate, there's more to this than just military. And it's important that we focus on that because it also affects commerce. This is why the Navy is in the Constitution and why it still matters. And these are important things. In order to do that, we have to pull back. We have to have a strong economy in order to afford the military. But it doesn't mean you have to use it. However, no nation at a point when its military is significantly the strongest or the stronger force is often challenged. You're not challenged when you're at the peak of your game, and you do not ramp up, as Morgan can tell you. You don't suddenly turn around and build ships like we build Higgins boats in World War II and put them out. It doesn't work. And we have developed significant capabilities, but we need to be able to deploy them smartly.
Well, we can't do it all. We certainly can't do it all.
And that's another point of the president's message.
Yeah, we can't have bases
share.
open in every nation. We can't be actively engaged in 70% of the nations
we have
on
been
Earth.
70% of the resource, to use that number accurately, for NATO. We have been the force that has been the physical
Another
force
area
and the platform.
where Democrats stayed seated. And I really thought that would be an area where, if you want to see a decrease in military spending, wouldn't you want to see other nations contributing to NATO and the defense of the treaty?
For the Democrats, it's simple. It's Trump. One thing the president has done very smartly, he has taken things that Democrats and Republicans have talked about for years, the federal government structure, whatever, and he has done them. And there are many accomplishments here. So he's taken these things away from them, and it's like taking candy away from a baby. They don't like it.
You had a couple of areas where you thought the president could have expanded, and I had a couple of areas where the president didn't even touch. We'll talk about those in just a little bit, and we're about to catch up with wise guy Tyrus, who was watching the president speak, to get his first take. But first, a peek at some more wise guys, only on Fox Nation.
A West Coast panel tackles California's biggest issues.
We do not want to become anything like California. The state is absolutely running itself into the ground.
Its education system.
Campuses are stifling free speech.
We're not preparing them for real life.
And political influence on students.
Democrats don't actually care about those DACA kids anymore.
That's the one part they're against. If we don't win these young people over, we could lose America.
The compelling roundtable discussion you can't miss on Wise Guys.
Part of the exclusive content anywhere, anytime. It's right here, only on Fox Nation. And joining me now, Tyrus, host of UnPC. Tyrus, where are you at? You back home in New Orleans?
I'm celebrating. I'm so excited. I thought I was going to be able to light my Unity cigar tonight by all the positivity at the State of the Union. So, but unfortunately, after the Democratic speech, I'm back to my division drink.
Don't put your Unity cigar
But it was close. But it was,
in your
I'm gonna save this
division drink. Okay,
You know,
all right.
I thought Buzz Aldrin was going to bring us all together. You know,
People were excited about Buzz.
Like, there's a chance, and then we had the USA chant, but Buzz Aldrin was my favorite part.
I like Buzz Aldrin too because he takes guff from no one. And
no one. I mean, if they would have booed him, somebody would have got punched in the mouth.
Exactly right. So all you have to do is go up to Buzz Aldrin and say the moon landing was fake, and you're gonna walk away with fewer limbs. And let's take a look at that Buzz Aldrin moment tonight in the President's State of the Union address. Watch.
Half a century later, we are joined by one of the Apollo 11 astronauts who planted that flag, Buzz Aldrin.
All right, Tyrus, there you go. Well said.
Well, there's my
picked.
point. The point of that, did you hear how loud that was?
Mm-hmm.
Did you hear how unified that was?
I did. Everyone should have been
That
smoking
was a
cigars
good
at that
feeling.
point.
And then shortly after that, we had a USA chant. I thought I was back in the WWE there for a minute. Like, it was a great moment that unfortunately is going to be short and probably not remembered. I'm not big on speeches. I'm not big on rhetoric. What it means to me is actions always mean louder than words. Mm-hmm. I thought it was a great speech by the president tonight. I thought there was more unity in that room than there was the year before. So, you know, there was even a great exchange between him and some of the Democrats or whatever. So I saw signs that maybe this obstruction stuff is going to end. But then, unfortunately, as soon as I had to sit through the speech, I realized that, you know what, it's going to be business as usual, unfortunately. And now we're going to have to wait for the response from the Democratic speech. And then that will probably be toxic. And then we'll be right back where we started from with a government shutdown right around the corner. So what literally I thought was a great night, after hearing the response, now I'm like, well, unfortunately, it'll probably be business as usual.
All right,
and
well,
that's bad for the country.
Enough said. Tyrus Smash. We'll see you Saturday night on the Greg Gutfeld Show. Thanks so much, Tyrus.
Enough said.
That's right. Well, it's time to go around the horn and rate the speech. We have our paddles.
Getting back to my party.
I'm going to go to you first, Morgan. On a scale of 1 to 5, paddleliciousness, you give the president a 5 tonight.
Why not?
Very, very sweet.
Yeah.
Very
That
gracious.
World War II moment, he deserved it.
Yeah, that really brought him up a few points in my book. What about you, David Webb?
I'm a tough grader, but on this one, I'm going to give him 2 grades. One is a 5, the other one in the black. Economically, we're in the black, we're doing better, and that means something.
All right, well, I will give the president a 4, and I'll tell you why. We didn't hear enough about cost cutting. We didn't hear enough about the debt and the $21 trillion that we and future generations are facing. We didn't hear enough about future tax cuts and how to grow the economy by cutting spending first and foremost, and then bigger, better tax cuts in the future. I want to thank everyone tonight who participated. Silk, Diamond is somewhere in the ether still enjoying the speech. Thank you so much. Silk, Tommy Lahren out in Los Angeles bringing it all home for us on the West Coast. Thank you, Tommy.
Thank you, guys.
And of course, to Morgan Ortagus and David Webb here in the studio, along with Lawrence Jones.
Yeah, that's right.
Who went to go join the one and only Sean Hannity on the Fox News channel. That does it for Fox Nation. Thanks so much for signing up and taking part. Get your year subscription now, and don't miss a moment. Opinion done right. And from Kennedy and all of us in New York, good night.
The guns are out there still. It's one of the worst scandals I've ever seen. This has put a lot of blood on my hands.
Do you think there is a cover-up?
Sorry.
Today's stop, the Lincoln Memorial. We're really going in.
We're really going in.
This was never really viewed from the public.
The polar bear expedition was a useless folly that was based on a bad idea. Recreate the Eastern Front in World War I and relieve pressure on the Western Front.
To Michael and Alex, me and your mother are doing everything we can to get you home.
Your mama loves you so much.
Susan Smith chose to put her happiness and her life ahead of that of her children.
So this area is not fenced like the other area is simply because of funding.
Protecting America's borders has always been a risky, dangerous job.
The folks here in the caravan are showing no signs of slowing down.
Young woman claims she was brutally raped at the Kennedy family Palm Beach estate.
I was thinking, this is the Kennedys. These are political people. I remember thinking, I'm screaming my head off, and why isn't anybody coming down here and stopping this?
It's a 29-year-old single mother of one up against the Kennedy machine.